Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're talking about Queen Elizabeth II. For over 70 years, in a world that was just constantly, dizzyingly changing, she was the one thing that seemed to stay the same. Her reign was so long, it didn't just witness history, it kind of became the benchmark we measure history by. So, let's dive in.
Okay, let's just start with this number because it's staggering. 70 years and 214 days. I mean, that is wild. It makes her the longest reigning British monarch in history and the longest reigning queen ever. Just try to wrap your head around the amount of change the world went through in that one single lifetime.
And if you want some perspective on that, get this. She was served by 15 different British prime ministers. Her very first was Winston Churchill, born way back in 1874. Her last was Liz Truss, born over a century later in 1975. That entire span of time, bridged by one monarch? It's just incredible.
So yeah, this incredible longevity made her this completely unique figure on the world stage. For generations of people, not just in Britain, but all over the globe, she was the only monarch they had ever known. She became the ultimate constant in a world of relentless, and let's be honest, often confusing, change.
So how did she feel about this immense responsibility that was kind of thrust upon her? Well, she actually answered that question herself long before she ever wore the crown.
On her 21st birthday, way back in 1947, she made this public promise in a broadcast to the Commonwealth. She said, "My whole life shall be devoted to your service." And you know what? It was a vow she would keep for the next 75 years.
But here's the truly fascinating part. This icon of stability, this symbol of unwavering duty, she was never supposed to be queen at all. Her destiny was completely rewritten by a massive royal crisis.
Yeah, when she was a young girl, she was third in line for the throne. Her uncle, Edward, was the heir. The plan was pretty simple. He would get married, have kids, and her father would just remain the Duke of York. She would get pushed further and further down the line of succession. And then, everything changed. In 1936, her uncle, now King Edward VIII, decided to abdicate, to give up the throne, so he could marry Wallis Simpson, a divorced American socialite. This was a huge constitutional crisis. It made her father the king, and suddenly, 10-year-old Elizabeth was the heir to the throne. Her life was set on a completely new and unexpected course.
So when she finally did take the throne in 1952, she was just 25 years old, and she inherited not just a kingdom, but a world that was in the middle of a profound transformation.
I mean, her reign basically oversaw the final transformation of the British Empire into the Commonwealth of Nations. She started as queen of 7 independent countries and then watched as dozens of others gain their independence, with many of them choosing to keep her as their head of state. It was a massive geopolitical shift, and she navigated it with remarkable poise.
And here's the really critical part. She had to do all of this as a constitutional monarch. That means she could reign, but she couldn't rule. She had to stay politically neutral through some massive social and political upheavals. We're talking everything from the Troubles in Northern Ireland to Britain joining and then leaving the European Union.
So she maintained her influence through travel, becoming the most widely traveled head of state in history. She made these absolutely groundbreaking trips, becoming the first reigning British monarch to ever visit China and Russia. And in 2011, her state visit to the Republic of Ireland, wow, that was a deeply powerful symbol of reconciliation. But her reign wasn't just about diplomacy and state visits. Oh no, it was also marked by some intense personal and public turmoil, which really all came to a head in the 1990s.
In a speech that was just remarkably personal for her, the Queen herself called 1992 her annus horribilis. That's Latin for horrible year. It was such a rare public admission of just how much strain her family and the monarchy itself were under. And the reasons were pretty clear. It was just a relentless year of very public marriage breakdowns for 3 of her children, and then on top of that, a devastating fire broke out at Windsor Castle, one of her favorite homes. All of this, of course, was happening under an intensely critical media spotlight. But the real challenge peaked in 1997 with the tragic death of Diana, Princess of Wales. While the public was having this massive outpouring of grief outside Buckingham Palace, the royal family stayed silent and secluded up in Scotland, and that disconnect caused this huge wave of public anger and dismay. So pressured by this hostile public reaction, the Queen came back to London. She agreed to address the nation on live television, and in that broadcast, she spoke not just as a monarch, but with warmth and as a grandmother. That speech was a total turning point.
As a result, so much of that public anger just evaporated.
Now, despite all those crises, support for the monarchy and her personal popularity stayed remarkably high, especially in her later years. This really cemented her legacy as this figure of stability.
And the data tells a really compelling story. Polls throughout her later reign consistently showed overwhelming support. I mean, during her Diamond Jubilee in 2012, her approval rating hit a staggering 90%. That's a pretty clear sign of how well she had weathered all those earlier storms.
And this view of her was global. In 2010, the UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon introduced her with a phrase that just perfectly captured how so many people saw her: an anchor for our age, a point of stability and continuity in a really turbulent world. And she really embodied that sense of duty right to the very end. On September 6, 2022, she carried out one of her most important constitutional duties, appointing her 15th Prime Minister. She died peacefully just 2 days later, at the age of 96.
So ultimately, her reign provided this unparalleled sense of continuity for over 70 years. She was the living link between a post-war Britain and the 21st century. And her passing leaves us with one final big question to think about. After a lifetime of constancy, what is the future of the monarchy without its anchor?